Meet Daniel Carter, a powerful CEO whose life is built on control, structure, and silence. But all of that begins to crack one rainy morning in New York when a 10-year-old boy named Noah delivers groceries to his office. And Daniel freezes. The boy's eyes, they're his. Haunted by the resemblance, Daniel digs into the boy's world. What he finds is staggering. Noah is his son, a son he never knew existed, a son hidden from him by his own sister. As Daniel steps into the forgotten corners of the city, the crumbling apartments, the aching past, he also steps into the role of a father, one Noah doesn't fully trust. Not yet. Can a man who built empires fix what money never touched? As legal battles rage and betrayal resurfaces, a crumpled delivery list marked family may be the only symbol of hope left. Will Noah let Daniel in before it's too late? Subscribe for more heartfelt stories of redemption, family, and the quiet power of truth. The December wind had a way of slicing through New York City's noise, softening even the sharpest honks and chatter. From the corner office of Carter Holdings, 47 floors up, Daniel Carter usually couldn't hear it, but that morning he swore he could feel it, a draft slipping under his collar, unsettling something deep inside him. Daniel Carter wasn't the kind of man who got distracted easily. He was a CEO, built from stone and strategy, not sentiment. But when he glanced out of the window and saw the delivery boy, everything else, the boardroom chatter, the pending acquisition, even the espresso cooling at his desk, disappeared. The boy couldn't have been older than 10. He was small, carrying a plastic crate of groceries nearly as wide as his torso. But it wasn't the delivery uniform or the oversized beanie that caught Daniel's eye. It was the boy's face. More precisely, his eyes. The same gray-green, flecked with amber, framed by lashes too long for a boy. The same eyes Daniel saw every morning in the mirror. He stood, almost too quickly, and stepped toward the glass. "Mr. Carter?" his assistant called from the conference table, eyebrows raised. Daniel didn't answer. His focus followed the boy as he crossed the lobby, balancing the crate with practiced ease. The automatic doors hissed open, and he disappeared into the cold. That should have been the end of it. Just a moment, a coincidence. But something in Daniel refused to let it go. Later that afternoon, he found himself outside the Carter Building lobby, collar up, hands stuffed in his coat. He never came down here without security, but today he'd waved them off. He needed clarity, not an entourage. Then, as if summoned by thought alone, the boy reappeared, weaving through traffic with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a new delivery in hand. Daniel's breath caught. "Hey, kid," he called. The boy didn't stop. Daniel jogged after him, slowing only when the boy paused at a brownstone 2 blocks over. The building looked tired. Bricks cracked with time, mailboxes dented, buzzers rusted. The boy rang a bell, waited, then turned around, and froze. Can I help you, mister?" he asked, wary. Daniel stepped closer, slowly. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. "Noah." "Why?" Noah. The name punched a hole through Daniel's composure. He cleared his throat. "You do deliveries?" "Obviously," Noah muttered, adjusting the crate. Daniel almost smiled. Not at the attitude, but at the sound of it. Confident. Familiar. "You work alone?" "My mom helps with the schedule. I do the runs." Noah narrowed his eyes. "Why do you care?" Daniel knelt slightly, lowering himself to the boy's level. "You just reminded me of someone I used to know." Noah tilted his head, skeptical. "I don't know you." Daniel nodded slowly. "You're right. You don't." A door buzzed. Noah turned, stepping inside without another word. Daniel stayed frozen, staring at the closed door long after the boy had vanished up the stairs. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat in his penthouse 1,000 feet above the city, surrounded by muted art and untouched wine, with one question ringing louder than all the silence. Could he be mine? He pulled out his old journals, flipping through a decade of forgotten entries. And then he saw it. A note, scribbled in haste, nearly buried beneath meeting minutes and stock quotes. Rachel, October, Brooklyn. His chest tightened. Rachel. They had been young, reckless, and real. She was the only woman who'd ever made him question the Carter empire, the only one he never said goodbye to properly. And now, her son, their son? He couldn't be sure. Not yet. But his heart, the part of him buried beneath years of cold success, was already shifting. A single photo sat on his desk, dusty from neglect. It was his mother, holding him at age 10. Daniel turned it over and stared at the boy's eyes. His eyes, the same ones Noah had. He closed his eyes, swallowed hard, and whispered, "I need to know the truth." Somewhere across the city, in a walk-up with peeling paint and flickering lights, a boy laid his clipboard on a chipped kitchen table. On the back of it, in pencil-smudged handwriting, one name stood out on his delivery list: Daniel Carter. Noah circled it once, then underlined it, not because he understood who the man was, but because of the way he looked at him, as if he'd seen a ghost. The next morning, Daniel sat alone in his car outside that same brownstone, engine off, hands trembling slightly. He didn't know what he'd find behind that door, but he was finally ready to knock. The boy's name still echoed in Daniel's mind: Noah. The next morning, the wind was colder, the city louder, but nothing could drown out the urgency that had taken hold of him. He sat behind the wheel of his sleek black sedan, parked just across from the rundown brownstone where the boy had vanished the day before. He wasn't a man who waited, not in business, not in life, but this was different. He checked the delivery list again, the same clipboard Noah had tucked under his arm. The top name, Rachel M. Harper, apartment 4C. Rachel. The moment he saw it, it was like time folded in on itself. 13 years ago, a rooftop in Brooklyn, her laughter in the dark, the way she used to sketch with her feet dangling over the edge, calling him too stiff to love properly. He had told her he couldn't promise forever, and she had vanished before morning. Now she was just across the street. Daniel stepped out of the car and crossed the road, heart pounding, fists clenched to keep them from shaking. The building's buzzer panel was rusted, barely readable, but there she was. 4C. He pressed the button. Silence. Then, a crackling voice. "Hello?" He took a breath. "Rachel, it's Daniel Carter." A pause. Then the buzz. The door clicked. Climbing the stairs felt heavier than any boardroom elevator ride. Each step was filled with questions he didn't know how to ask. When he reached the 4th floor, the door was already open. She stood there. Rachel. Older, thinner, but unmistakably her. Her eyes were still fire and ocean at once. She didn't smile. "Daniel," she said quietly, stepping aside, "come in, but don't think I owe you anything." He entered the modest apartment. The walls were faded. A few crayon drawings were taped beside the fridge. One was of a boy with a backpack. Another was a woman, arms wide, holding hands with a man whose face was left blank. Daniel stared at it longer than he meant to. She folded her arms. "So, you saw him?" He nodded. "Noah. He has my eyes." Rachel's voice cracked, but her back stayed straight. "He's your son, Daniel." Those 4 words knocked the air out of him. "I tried to tell you," she continued, voice trembling. 10 years ago, I wrote, I called your office, But I never got past your assistant. Daniel blinked. Clara. Rachel looked away. Yeah, her. He swallowed. You're telling me my sister kept this from me? Rachel stepped into the small kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. Her hands trembled just slightly. Clara showed up after I stopped trying. Said it was better this way. Said she'd take care of things. And she did. Daniel frowned. Take care? Rachel nodded, her tone hollow. She gave me money, enough to keep going, but only if I disappeared, quietly. The room went still. Daniel gripped the back of a chair, steadying himself. You didn't tell me. Why didn't you come to me directly? Rachel's eyes filled. I tried, Daniel. I did. But when a Carter says no, the world listens, and I didn't want Noah growing up thinking he was someone's secret. He stared at her, at the strength in her, the fire that hadn't faded. He thought about Noah, the delivery list, the tired sneakers. I didn't know, he whispered. I know, she said gently, but that doesn't erase the years. Silence settled between them. Finally, she turned to him fully. Why are you here now? Daniel pulled something from his coat, a folded slip of paper, Noah's delivery list. Because I saw a boy with my eyes, and I can't unsee him. Rachel stared at the list. Her fingers brushed over the corner of it. Is he okay? Daniel asked, almost pleading. Is Noah okay? Rachel's voice softened. He's a good kid, smart, kind, but he asks questions. He wants to know why his dad never wanted him. Daniel's heart fractured. I want to meet him, he said, carefully. Rachel raised her chin. Then don't do it with a limo. Don't bring money or cameras. Don't come in like a CEO. He nodded, voice cracking. Then how? Come like a father. Later that night, Daniel sat in his office replaying her words. In his hand was a drawing, the one with the faceless man, and for the first time he wondered if he had the courage to fill in that outline himself. The apartment door had barely closed behind Daniel before the weight of everything Rachel said came crashing down. He drove back through the streets of New York, barely noticing the blur of headlights and neon signs. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The crayon drawing Rachel, taped near her fridge, the one of the faceless man, kept flashing in his mind like a signal he'd ignored too long. He didn't sleep that night. By dawn, he was in his penthouse, standing in front of his father's old filing cabinet. It hadn't been opened in years, not since Clara took over the day-to-day management of the family's personal affairs. The lock was stiff, but it clicked open with a little force. Inside were the years of archived records, birthdays, foundations, board meeting minutes, and then a folder marked R.H. Rachel Harper. Daniel pulled it out with shaking fingers. Inside were 7 neatly stacked envelopes, all addressed to him, all unopened. His name was written in Rachel's handwriting. He'd recognize the looping D anywhere. The first one was dated March 23rd, nearly 10 years ago, just 2 months after their last night together. He sank into the leather chair behind his desk, slowly opening the first letter. Dear Daniel, I'm writing because I think you have a right to know. By the second sentence, his vision blurred. She had tried, repeatedly. The letters weren't desperate. They were dignified, full of updates, questions, even kindness. Rachel had written about morning sickness, about craving peanut butter, about not knowing if she should name the baby after him. Each letter was a quiet cry into a void, hoping he might care enough to listen. And Clara. Clara had made sure he never heard them. Daniel's chest burned with a fury he hadn't felt since the day their father passed. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the theft of time, of a childhood he'd never seen, of milestones he'd never shared, of laughter that was never his to hear. He picked up his phone and called Clara. She answered on the second ring, her voice clipped and rehearsed. "Morning, Daniel. I saw the stock alert. We're up half a—" "Don't," he said, voice low. A pause. "Don't what?" "I found the letters." Another pause, a longer one. Then, coolly, "I did what I had to do." He stood up, pacing. "You lied to me. For 10 years. You let me believe she vanished. You let me think, I protected this family," Clara snapped. "You were about to be named youngest chair of Carter Holdings. Do you know what a scandal like that would have done? A son with an artist in Brooklyn? You would have lost everything." "I lost more than everything," he said hoarsely. "I lost my son." There was silence on the other end. Then Clara said quietly, "You're a Carter, Daniel, and Carters don't break, even when the world expects them to." He didn't respond. He ended the call. For a long time, Daniel just stood there, letting the room settle into silence. On the desk sat Rachel's letters spread like fragile wings across the leather. He touched the top envelope again. Inside was a sketch, a tiny pencil drawing of a newborn, fast asleep, with a name scribbled beneath. Noah Carter. Harper. He whispered it like a prayer. Noah had no idea who he was, and if Daniel showed up now, as the man with a corner office and a last name printed on skyscrapers, it would mean nothing. Worse, it might look like a stunt. But maybe there was another way. That afternoon, he drove back toward the neighborhood. But he didn't bring security. No driver, no suit. Just a backpack, a bag of groceries, and Noah's crumpled delivery list tucked into his pocket. As he stood outside the bodega where the boy worked part-time, Daniel caught sight of him again. Noah, dragging a crate of canned beans across the sidewalk, cheeks flushed red from the cold. Same eyes, same determination. But this time, Daniel didn't approach. He just watched quietly. He would need time. Trust couldn't be bought, not with money and not with a last name. It had to be earned. The morning after finding Rachel's unopened letters, Daniel Carter sat in his office, staring blankly at the skyline. The letters were still in his coat pocket, each one a silent indictment. But what haunted him most wasn't just the words she wrote, it was the thought of what she hadn't been able to say. Clara had made sure of that. He replayed their phone call over and over, her cold defense of betrayal, her insistence that it was all for his protection, for the Carter name. But when did his name become more important than his life? He opened his laptop, pulled up a directory of Carter Holdings' internal expense reports, and began digging. If Clara had paid Rachel off, there would be a trail. It didn't take long. A wire transfer. $150,000, labeled Community Grant Disbursement, issued to a nonprofit called Safe Beginnings. The recipient? Rachel Harper. Daniel leaned back, jaw clenched. He picked up the phone and called his private investigator, a former journalist named Sylvia Hale, who never missed a thread. "I need you to find out everything you can about a wire transfer made through Safe Beginnings 5 years ago," he said. "And who authorized it?" "Understood," Sylvia replied crisply. "You expecting pushback?" "Yes," Daniel said quietly, "from my own blood." By noon, Sylvia had already called back. Clara set up the grant, routed it through 2 intermediaries to make it look like it came from a community health fund. But the money didn't go toward a program. It went directly to Rachel Harper's account. I have the signatures to prove it. Daniel exhaled slowly. Was there an agreement? There was a non-disclosure, a standard NDA, but Rachel never signed it. She cashed the check and stopped reaching out. My guess? She took the money thinking it was from you. He hung up, heart thudding. That night, Daniel returned to the neighborhood. No driver, no press. He found Rachel in the courtyard of their apartment complex, sitting on a worn bench under a flickering street lamp. She was folding laundry in a cracked plastic basket, her coat draped loosely over her shoulders. She looked up, startled. "I'm not here to fight," Daniel said, hands raised gently. "Just to understand." Rachel blinked, the cold wind brushing her cheek. "Understand what, Daniel?" "The money," he said softly. "The letters you sent. I never got them. My sister, Clara, intercepted everything. She wired you that payment to disappear, and I didn't know, not until 2 days ago." Her shoulders tensed. She stared at him for a long moment, eyes narrowing. "I thought it was from you," she said slowly. "I thought it was your way of saying, 'Thank you, now go away.' So I stopped writing. I raised Noah on my own. I told him you were busy, important, but I never told him you didn't care." Daniel sat beside her, cautiously. "I didn't know he existed, and now that I do, I want to make this right." Rachel gave a bitter laugh, not unkind, but edged with years of silent sacrifice. "You can't unmiss his first steps, Daniel, or his first day of school, or the night he asked why his last name was different from the boys in his class." "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I can't get that time back, but maybe I can show him who I am now." Rachel looked away, then down at her hands. "You're the CEO of a billion-dollar empire," she murmured. "You walk into a room and the world listens. But he's just a kid, a smart, sensitive, stubborn little boy who doesn't need someone to throw money at him. He needs someone who will stick around when things aren't easy." "I'm not here to throw money," Daniel said. "I'm here because I saw him delivering groceries in the freezing cold, wearing shoes 2 sizes too small, and when I looked in his eyes, I saw myself. I'm not asking for a second chance at us. I'm asking for a first chance with him." Rachel's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "He likes puzzles," she said quietly, "and drawing. He keeps a sketchbook under his mattress. He pretends he doesn't care about birthdays, but he counts the days until his next one." Daniel smiled painfully. "What does he want this year?" Rachel hesitated, then looked at him. "He wants to know who his father is." The next morning, Daniel stood across the street from the corner bodega, watching from behind his scarf and coat collar. Snow clung to the sidewalk in slushy piles. A delivery truck honked impatiently as a boy no taller than the crates he carried slid 2 paper bags onto his arms. Noah, 10 years old, moving with the grit of someone twice his age. His hat was pulled low, his sneakers soaked at the toes, but his eyes, those steady, sharp, cautious eyes, scanned the street the same way Daniel's did before stepping into a boardroom. Daniel crossed the street slowly. "Need a hand?" he asked gently. Noah glanced up, startled but not afraid. "You lost or something?" the boy asked, adjusting the bags. "No, just saw you working hard. Thought maybe you could use a break." "I don't take breaks," Noah muttered. "I deliver groceries. People need their food." Daniel smiled. "That's responsible of you." Noah shrugged. "I get tips. My mom's sick. Bills don't care if you're tired." He turned to leave, and Daniel took a small step forward. "I'm Daniel," he said softly. "Daniel Carter?" Noah paused. His brow furrowed. "You're the guy from the tall buildings. Mom said your name once. You're rich, right?" Daniel chuckled lightly. "I suppose so." "Then what are you doing here? In the snow? Following me?" Daniel hesitated. He looked down at the boy, his chest tightening. "I think we might be connected." Noah tilted his head. "What does that mean?" Before Daniel could answer, a paper bag in Noah's left hand tore slightly at the seam. Without thinking, Daniel reached out and steadied it. "I said I don't need help," Noah said sharply, jerking away. "I've carried heavier." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "I just wanted to—" "To what?" Noah cut in. "Give me money? Buy me stuff? You think I'll be impressed or something?" His voice cracked, just a little, but enough for Daniel to hear the wall behind it. "No," Daniel said calmly. "I don't want to impress you." "Then why are you here?" Daniel knelt slightly so his eyes were level with Noah's. "Because I saw you yesterday, and something about you stayed with me. The way you walked, the way you looked at people. It reminded me of myself. And when I asked your name and learned who your mom was, I realized I should have been in your life a long time ago." Noah's arms tensed around the bags. "You're saying you're my dad?" he asked, voice trembling now. Daniel's heart caught. "I am." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind blew, brushing snowflakes off the fire escapes. "You think you can just show up now?" Noah asked. "After 10 years, with your fancy coat and expensive shoes?" Daniel stood again, slowly. "I know I can't fix everything with words, or money. I can't rewind the time I wasn't there, but I'm here now, and I want to earn your trust, however long that takes." Noah looked down. His fingers squeezed the handles of the bags. "You're not the first person to say that." "I'm not," Daniel asked gently. "My mom had a boss who said he'd help us once, gave us $20 and never came back. I'm not like him," Daniel said firmly. Noah didn't answer. He turned toward the apartment entrance and pushed the door open with his shoulder. Before stepping inside, he paused. "You want to help?" he said over his shoulder. "Don't just talk about it." Then he disappeared into the stairwell. Daniel stood there, his breath visible in the cold. His hands ached with helplessness, but deep down something flickered. That flicker, it wasn't rejection, it was challenge. And he had accepted it. Later that night, back in his penthouse, Daniel pulled out one of Noah's grocery receipts Rachel had given him, one with a hand-drawn cartoon face doodled in the margins. The boy had drawn himself smiling. Over the smile, in bold pencil strokes, was a word. "Delivery." Daniel traced it slowly, then folded the paper and tucked it into his wallet. The memory of Noah's voice still echoed in Daniel's ears as he made his way back to Rachel's apartment. "Do you just want to show off your money?" The boy's words, blunt and laced with hurt, had struck deeper than he expected. Rachel opened the door before he could knock, her expression tired but unreadable. She stepped aside silently. Daniel entered, his shoes clicking softly on the worn hardwood. The air smelled faintly of vanilla and paper, a scent he remembered from years ago. "I guess you talked to him," Rachel said, folding her arms, leaning against the kitchen counter. Daniel nodded slowly. "He thinks I'm here to impress him, that I'm some flashy suit waving a checkbook around." She gave a bitter laugh. "Well, aren't you?" Her words weren't meant to wound, but they did. He took a seat at the small dining table, the same one she had once served him tea at, in what felt like another life. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "Rachel, I swear to you, I never got your letters. I never even knew he existed." She turned her back to him, hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the sink. "And now that you do? What, some guilt kicked in between board meetings?" Daniel looked down at his hands. "Clara kept the truth from me. She intercepted your letters, paid you off to stay silent. I found the wire transfers." Rachel slowly turned around. Her face was pale, eyes wide. "She did what?" He nodded solemnly. "All these years. I thought you had moved on, that you didn't want anything to do with me. I blamed you." Rachel's eyes welled up. She leaned against the counter as though the truth stole the strength from her legs. "I waited, Daniel. I waited months after Noah was born. I wrote, I called. I begged your assistant to tell you. I never got anything," he whispered, almost desperately. "You have to believe me." The room fell into a thick silence. Outside, a car horn blared in the distance. Somewhere above them, footsteps echoed through the ceiling. Rachel finally walked over and sat across from him. Her voice softened. I raised him on my own. Through ear infections, scraped knees, birthdays without balloons. He asks about his dad every year, and every year I had no answer. Tears brimmed in Daniel's eyes, but he blinked them back. Then let me be one now. Let me earn that right. Rachel's jaw clenched. He's not a project, Daniel. He's not some company you can fix with a check or a rebrand. I know, Daniel said gently. I know that now. I want to show him I'm here. Not for charity, not for image, for him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then prove it. Daniel pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket and slid it across the table. It was a drawing, a clumsy sketch he'd attempted of the day he first saw Noah on the sidewalk. A tiny figure in a red hoodie, looking up, confused and curious. The caption read, "The day I almost didn't stop." Rachel looked at the drawing, her lip trembling. You drew this? He nodded. I've been carrying it. I don't know what kind of artist I am anymore, but it helped me feel close to him. A tear slipped down her cheek as she nodded slowly. He's worth the effort. Daniel stood, pausing before heading to the door. Rachel, thank you for raising him, for not letting him grow up hating me. As he reached for the doorknob, she called out softly, Daniel. He turned, hand still on the door. I don't know if we can ever be what we were, but if you really want to be his father, then be ready to fight for him. Daniel gave a slow, steady nod. Am. And, as he stepped out into the night, the sketch still vivid in Rachel's hands, he knew this wasn't the end of the battle. It was only the beginning. The soft hum of the city outside Daniel's penthouse windows felt distant that morning. After weeks of trying to bridge the years with Noah and make things right with Rachel, the progress he'd made felt fragile, like a sketch in charcoal, one careless swipe away from vanishing. But what landed on his desk that morning wasn't fragile at all. Daniel stared at the envelope. Legal, cold, deliberate. His fingers trembled as he tore it open. His name, the firm's name, Clara's name. Petition to investigate fitness for custody. A slow breath escaped him. He sat back, heart pounding. The ink on the paper swam as the weight of it settled in. Across town, Clara Carter stood on the balcony of the family estate, watching the morning sun wash over the hills. Her posture, elegant but rigid. Her lawyer stood beside her, briefcase in hand. He won't go quietly, she said coolly. The attorney, a man who specialized in the family litigation for the wealthy, nodded. We don't need him to. We just need to show he's impulsive, that he's distracted, too emotionally unstable for parental responsibility. She sipped her espresso, eyes narrowing. He's making a fool of our name, risking the Carter legacy, all for a boy he didn't even know existed. Back in the city, Daniel's phone buzzed. Rachel. He answered, his voice hoarse. Hey, you got it, didn't you? She asked softly. He closed his eyes. Yeah, I did. There was silence between them for a moment. Then Rachel's voice returned, low and pained. She'll drag everything through the mud. Me, Noah, you. I know, he said, but I'm not backing down. Later that day, Daniel met with his legal team in the boardroom of Carter & Wells. The usual cold precision of the room now felt stifling. He didn't wear his usual sharp suit. Today, he wore a plain gray sweater. Less CEO, more father. She's challenging your competence as a parent, his lead attorney Miles said gravely. She's building a case that you're emotionally erratic, that your recent business decisions have been reckless, that your connection to the child is too new to matter. Daniel's jaw tightened. She's trying to turn my love into a liability. Miles nodded. And she's good at it. She's already filed a motion to seize temporary control of your voting shares in the company. claims you're a distraction to shareholders. Daniel looked out the window. The skyline stretched out like a promise and a threat. Let her come. That night, in the quiet of his study, Daniel opened his sketchbook again. He flipped past the rough sketch of Noah in the hoodie, past Rachel laughing under a street lamp, drawings he never meant for anyone to see. He stopped on a blank page and began again. This time, he drew Clara. The sister, who had once read bedtime stories to him, who held his hand when their mother died, who, somewhere along the way, had decided that control was love. The drawing was angry, sharp lines, cold eyes. He stared at it for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately, tore it out. The next morning, the courtroom buzzed with murmurs as Daniel entered. He didn't come alone. Rachel was already there, holding Noah's hand gently. The boy looked nervous, clutching a folded piece of paper. Clara sat in the front row, poised in a crisp white suit, her expression unreadable. The judge, a composed woman in her 60s, looked over the case file before lifting her eyes to Daniel. "Mr. Carter, you've been accused of acting recklessly in pursuit of custody. Do you have anything to say?" Daniel rose. His voice was steady but full of quiet fire. "Yes, Your Honor. I made mistakes. I missed 10 years of my son's life, not by choice, but I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." He turned, locking eyes with Clara. "Love isn't reckless, it's brave, and I won't apologize for finally finding mine." The judge nodded. "We'll continue with testimony next week." As they exited the courtroom, Noah slipped the folded note into Daniel's hand. "I wrote something," the boy said shyly, "in case they ask me anything." Daniel opened it. It was a delivery list, Noah's old route, each name crossed off except for the last line. Daniel Carter, status, family. His throat tightened. He looked at his son, who gave him a half-smile. "Let's win this," Daniel whispered, voice thick with emotion. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Noah's note, his old delivery list with one word added beneath Daniel's name. Family. That one word echoed in Daniel's mind as he stood before the towering glass windows of Carter & Wells. Below him, New York pulsed. Horns, voices, life in constant motion, but inside him, everything stood still. He turned from the window and faced the conference room table. On it, a folder sat unopened. Inside were the final documents of a billion-dollar acquisition that had been in the works for 3 years. The company's board was counting on it. Shareholders were celebrating in advance. But Daniel's heart wasn't in the ink. It was in that courtroom, in that little boy with wide eyes, in the mother who had once loved him enough to wait and wait and wait, only to be silenced. Miles, his lawyer, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You sure about this?" Daniel's voice was low, steady. "If I sign that deal, I look like the man Clara says I am, someone who cares more about empire than people." "You'll lose your voting power," Miles said quietly. "You walk away from this deal, and she'll use that against you in court, paint it as instability, irresponsibility." Daniel walked over, picked up the folder, and ran his thumb along the edge. Then he tore the first page in half. Miles blinked. "You really are serious." Daniel looked at him, eyes calm, resolute. "I'm not walking away from a deal. I'm showing my son what real commitment looks like." That afternoon, in the polished wood of the courtroom, Clara sat with her attorney, smug behind her mask of grace. "He's unpredictable," she whispered sharply. "He just backed out of the Meridia acquisition. Use it. Tell the judge he's risking everyone's future, including Noah's." The lawyer nodded, rising as the judge entered. Daniel walked in moments later, a touch late, but his gaze didn't waver. He wasn't the same man who sat in boardrooms anymore. He was a father now, and the room could feel the shift. The judge adjusted her glasses. "We'll continue the custody hearing. Ms. Carter, your counsel may proceed." Clara's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we have reason to believe Mr. Carter's recent decisions endanger the financial stability of his company, and thus call into question his judgment as a prospective guardian." Daniel slowly stood. "May I respond?" The judge nodded. "You may." He took a step forward. "Yesterday, I had a choice. Secure a billion-dollar deal, or show my son that he's more important than any deal I could ever make." He paused, lifting Noah's folded delivery list. "This," he said, his voice catching, "is what matters. A child's trust. His belief that someone will finally put him first. I'm here today not because I'm perfect, but because I won't make him wait another 10 years. The judge studied him, saying nothing for a long moment. Then she leaned back. "We'll take a short recess. I'd like to see both parties in chambers. No attorneys." Clara stiffened. "Excuse me?" The judge didn't repeat herself. Inside the judge's chambers, the air was quieter, heavier. She looked at Daniel, then at Clara. "Your siblings. I don't see that often in custody battles." Clara folded her arms. "I'm protecting him. From himself." Daniel turned toward her slowly. "No, Clara. You're protecting our name. The name you've built your world around. But I'm trying to build something real, with flesh and heartbeat." The judge lifted a hand. "Enough." She turned to Clara. "Miss Carter, you've been interfering in this child's life since before Mr. Carter even knew he had a son. That deeply concerns me." Clara's mouth parted in protest, but no sound came. Back in the hallway, Rachel sat beside Noah on a bench. Her eyes flicked to the courtroom doors anxiously. "You think he's scared?" Noah asked, his voice quiet. Rachel hesitated. "Yes, but being scared doesn't mean you stop showing up." Noah looked down, twisting a small paperclip into shapes. Just then, the doors opened. Daniel stepped out. Noah jumped up. "Did she win?" Daniel knelt down, looked his son in the eyes. "It's not over yet, buddy. But I didn't leave. I'm still here." Noah nodded. "Good." Rachel met Daniel's gaze. There was still wariness there, still pain, but also something softer, respect. "You really gave up that deal?" she asked under her breath. He nodded. "Every penny." "Why?" she asked, almost accusing. He reached into his coat and pulled out the folded delivery list, handed it to her without a word. As she unfolded it, saw that last line, Daniel Carter, status, family. Her hand trembled just slightly. Her voice broke. "He wrote that?" Daniel nodded. They both looked at Noah, sitting on the bench, humming to himself, his shoes swinging just above the floor. Rachel blinked back the sting behind her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's see this through." The courtroom doors whispered shut behind them, but Daniel's mind was still echoing with everything that had just happened. Rachel's expression of reluctant hope, Noah's wide, searching eyes, and the judge's unreadable glance as she called the court back into session tomorrow. Back at the apartment, Noah sat at the small kitchen table, legs swinging under the chair. The light above flickered faintly. The place was old, lived in, warm in May, the way only time could make it. He had his pencil case out and a worn notepad beside him, the kind grocery clerks used to scribble delivery addresses. Daniel stepped inside cautiously, as if entering sacred ground. "You busy?" he asked gently. Noah looked up. "Just organizing my route for tomorrow." Daniel smiled and pulled out the chair opposite him. "You still delivering?" Noah shrugged. "Ms. Gomez needs her milk early, and Mr. Tang can't lift anything heavy. Mom says, if we can help, we help." There was something in his tone, quiet pride. It reminded Daniel of his own father, before the Carter name became more important than kindness. After a moment, Noah reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded sheet. "I made this today," he said, not quite meeting Daniel's eyes. "For you." Daniel unfolded it carefully. It was an old delivery list, names and addresses written in a boy's looping scrawl, but one name stood out. "Daniel Carter," it read, and next to it, in a different pen, underlined twice, was one word: family. Daniel didn't speak right away. His throat felt tight. He ran his fingers over the ink like it was something sacred. Noah finally asked, Do you really want to be my dad? Or are you just here because you feel bad?" Daniel met his gaze, voice steady but low. "I don't feel bad, Noah. I feel ashamed. I should have known. I should have fought harder, but I'm not here for guilt. I'm here because I want to earn that word you wrote." Noah studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, you get a trial run." Daniel laughed quietly. "Fair enough." From the doorway, Rachel watched. Her arms were folded, but her eyes were soft. Later that night, she and Daniel sat on the stoop under a flickering street lamp. The neighborhood buzzed with the distant traffic and the hum of old AC units clinging to windows. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Daniel said quietly. Rachel glanced at him. "Forgiveness isn't the problem, Daniel. Trust is." He nodded, not defending himself. She continued, "But I saw the way he looked at you tonight. And the way you held that paper. You weren't faking that." He smiled faintly. "It's been a long time since something mattered more than my company." Rachel leaned back, looking up at the stars barely visible through the city haze. "You know, he started that delivery list when he was 6. Said he wanted to be like the guys who showed up rain or shine. Said he wanted people to count on him." Daniel glanced down at the paper again. "He's already someone I admire." Inside, Noah sat by the window, watching them talk. He didn't hear the words, but he saw something he hadn't seen before. His mother relaxed, laughing a little, and Daniel not rushing off, not checking a watch. Just staying. Noah took his pencil and wrote one more name at the bottom of the list. His own. Then he drew a tiny house around the 3 names. In the morning, the hearing would resume. Clara would strike again. The board would question Daniel's judgment. The press would circle like vultures. But tonight, in a small apartment in the Bronx, a boy, his mother, and a CEO turned father built something far stronger than any company. A beginning. The echo of the courtroom still lingered in Daniel's ears. The sound of the gavel, the sharp measured voices of lawyers, and the flickering glances from the judge had all faded now. But what stayed with him was Noah. The way his son looked at him before they left. Not confused, not hesitant, just hopeful. Daniel stood outside the courthouse, hands shoved in his coat pockets, watching the traffic pass. The world felt quieter, like something deep had shifted. A new kind of responsibility weighed on him, one he wasn't trying to escape anymore. He wasn't just a CEO making decisions. He was a father being entrusted with a fragile, young heart. Inside a nearby cafe, Rachel sat with Noah, a cocoa mug warming his small hands. The boy looked up when Daniel stepped in, his expression cautious but calm. Rachel glanced at Daniel. Her eyes, though soft, still held history, both the kind that wounds and the kind that remembers love once real. Daniel sat across from them, unbuttoning his coat as if shedding an old version of himself. Rachel spoke first, gently. "Noah knows." The judge's words made it clear, but this isn't over tea and congratulations, Daniel. "I know," he said quietly, looking at his son. "This isn't about winning, it's about showing up." Noah tilted his head. "So, now what?" Daniel paused, then pulled something from his inside pocket, a folded piece of paper. Worn, smudged at the corners, he slid it across to Noah. The boy opened it slowly. It was the original delivery sheet, his old grocery route, every name and address handwritten, except now at the bottom in Daniel's neat, unsure script were 3 words: "Home is here." Noah blinked quickly, and a flush crept up his cheeks. Rachel saw the note and swallowed hard. Her voice softened. "He made that list by himself last year. Said it helped him remember people who smiled at him." Daniel smiled faintly. "I want to be on that list, not just at the bottom. I want to earn my place." Noah looked at his mother, then at the note, and finally at Daniel. "You're not on the list, but maybe you could start your own." Daniel chuckled gently, moved by the honesty. "Deal. First entry: a boy who teaches his dad how to be human." There was a quiet moment, one where even the clatter of cups and distant hum of the city seemed to hush. Rachel leaned forward. "I'm not saying I trust you completely, Daniel. Not yet. But if Noah wants this, then I won't stand in the way." Daniel nodded. "I don't expect the past to vanish, Rachel, but I hope the future's still being written." She looked at her son, then back at the man she once loved. "He needs structure, stability, a father who doesn't vanish when it gets hard." "I'll prove it. Every day, if I have to," Daniel said softly. Noah picked up his cocoa. "Can I still make deliveries?" Daniel smiled. "Only if I get to come with you sometimes." There was a glimmer in the boy's eyes, a spark of possibility. Outside the cafe, snow had begun to fall. Soft, slow, it made the city glow under the lamplight, wrapping the world in a quiet promise. Daniel stood and slipped on his coat again. "Can I walk you both home?" Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." They stepped outside together, 3 figures against the swirl of the winter air. Daniel didn't reach for Rachel's hand, and she didn't offer it. But Noah walked between them, a small bridge between years of silence and a future still taking shape. As they walked, Daniel noticed a single daisy poking through a crack in the sidewalk, out of place, persistent in the cold. He bent down and gently plucked it. "Here," he said, handing it to Rachel, "for everything that somehow survived." She looked at it, then at him. "You always were poetic, but I'm not here for poetry anymore." "No," he agreed. "You're here for him, and now, so am I." Up ahead, their apartment lights flickered to life as someone opened a window above. Daniel looked up, then back at the 2 people beside him. He hadn't just won a case today. He'd been given something infinitely more fragile. A second chance. And, just as the snow thickened around them, Rachel turned to him and asked, "So, what's next?" Daniel breathed in the cold, steady air and smiled. That's what he needed to figure out, together. The quiet after the storm felt unfamiliar to Daniel. After weeks of tension, legal battles, and trying to earn back trust one conversation at a time, something had finally shifted. Rachel had agreed to let him be Noah's father. That alone felt monumental, but there was still unfinished business, something deeper than court decisions and shared smiles. There was still Clara. Daniel sat in his office, the late afternoon light cutting long shadows across the floor. In front of him sat a thick envelope, one that had been slipped into his mailbox anonymously 2 nights ago. He hadn't opened it right away. Something about the weight of it felt dangerous, like peeling back the final veil on a lie he didn't want to believe had ever existed. Now, with hands steadier than they should have been, he untied the string. Inside were copies of emails, bank transfers, a scanned letter, handwritten, unmistakably Rachel's. Daniel's heart slowed. The letter was dated 10 years ago. It was short, but raw. Rachel had written about her pregnancy, about how scared she was, how she wanted to tell him but wasn't sure if he'd still care, and in the final line she'd asked, "If you want to be part of this child's life, please write back. I'll wait." Daniel stared at that sentence for a long moment. His jaw clenched. Not because of Rachel, because of the postscript, written in a different hand. He knew that handwriting. Clara had added it in pencil, faint and sharp. "Rachel, stop embarrassing yourself. Daniel will never see this. Walk away." His breath caught. All this time, he had assumed Rachel never tried, that she'd given up on him, vanished without a word. But she'd reached out. She had tried. And Clara had intercepted it. Silently, effectively, cruelly. Daniel stood abruptly. He grabbed the documents, shoved them into a folder, and marched out of the building. The skyline of Manhattan burned golden above him as he crossed Park Avenue, anger rising with every step. Clara's townhouse was guarded by an iron gate, but he didn't wait to be buzzed in. He pounded on the door. She opened it wearing pearls and feigned surprise. "Daniel, I wasn't expecting—" He held the letter up. "Read it." She paled. "Where did you get that?" "I should ask you the same," he replied coldly. "You've lied to me for 10 years. 10 years, Clara. You made me believe she walked away." Her voice dropped, still polished, but tense. "I did what was necessary. You were weeks away from merging with Goldman Harper. You couldn't afford that kind of scandal." "I lost a decade with my son," he shouted, voice breaking. She winced. "We were protecting the Carter name." "No," he said, quieter now, but deadlier. "You were protecting your own power. You wanted control of the company, and you used my life to get it." He stepped closer, pulling out his phone. "I'm going public with this. The board, the press, our family. Everyone will see what kind of Carter you are." Clara's lips trembled. "You'd destroy our family's name?" He looked at her, eyes tired, voice low. "You already did." He turned and walked away, the weight in his chest finally lifting, not from vengeance, but from clarity. Later that night, Daniel sat in a dimly lit room with Rachel and Noah. He laid the letter on the table. Rachel read it slowly, then covered her mouth. "That's why you never wrote back," she whispered. "I thought you didn't care." "I did," Daniel said, voice catching. "I do, and I'm sorry for not finding the truth sooner." Noah, sitting beside them, stared at the paper. He traced the faint pencil words with his finger. "She didn't want me to exist." Daniel leaned down. "She didn't want you to matter to me, but she failed." He took a breath, then opened his wallet and pulled out something Noah had given him weeks earlier, the grocery list with the word family scrawled at the bottom. He slid it next to the letter. "These are the 2 things that changed me the most," Daniel said. "One was built on lies. The other helped me find the truth." Rachel looked at him, softer now. "What will you do with Clara?" "I've already sent the letter to the board," Daniel replied. "She'll face the consequences." Noah looked up. "Are we safe now?" Daniel nodded, eyes misty. "We are, son. We are." The light overhead flickered, casting a warm glow on the worn letter and the grocery list that now sat side by side. And somewhere, between what had been broken and what had just begun, Daniel felt something he hadn't known in years. Peace. The morning light streamed softly through the kitchen window of the modest brownstone in East Harlem. It was a crisp Saturday, quiet except for the clatter of spoons against mixing bowls, laughter echoing off walls that, until recently, had only known silence. Daniel Carter stood barefoot by the stove, flipping pancakes while Noah arranged paper plates on a fold-out table in the living room. Behind them, Rachel placed a tray of sliced fruit next to rows of juice boxes. The Carter name once rang out in corporate boardrooms. Now, it hummed quietly through a kitchen filled with warmth, not wealth. "Dad," Noah called, proud emphasis on the word, "we're short on napkins again." Daniel turned, eyebrow raised. "Guess I forgot them on my grocery run. Can I trade you 1 pancake for the errand?" Noah grinned. 2 pancakes, and a strawberry." Rachel laughed from the doorway. He's got your negotiation skills." The air between them, once filled with hesitation and regret, now felt easy. Not perfect, but real. After Clara's downfall, the scandal had rocked the Carter empire. Board members scrambled, media outlets swarmed, and Clara herself quietly resigned, her legacy eclipsed by one truth-filled letter. Yet through it all, Daniel didn't chase retribution. He'd already found what he was looking for: family. Weeks earlier, Rachel had said she would allow him to be a father, but not a partner. Daniel honored that boundary, though something unspoken lingered between them, something deeper than old romance or new obligation. That something had become this: shared mornings, honest co-parenting, and now, a dream. The dream took shape after Noah's quiet question one evening. They'd just passed a boy sleeping on cardboard outside the deli, clutching a sack of bruised apples. "Why don't we help kids like him?" Noah had asked, voice soft. Daniel had looked at him, then at the list Noah once gave him, the same crumpled grocery sheet that now lived pinned to the fridge, its final word underlined in blue ink: family. And from that seed, something grew. The free food delivery program launched quietly. No press releases, no Carter Foundation banners, just flyers printed at the corner bodega, handed out by volunteers. Carter Community Couriers, groceries to go for kids in need. Each Saturday, families across the neighborhood received deliveries from vans driven by volunteers. Some were retired workers Daniel once laid off, others were college students Rachel had mentored. Each box came with essentials, and a hand-drawn note from Noah, signed with a smiley face. One drawing showed 3 stick figures under a sun: me, Mom, Dad. On this particular Saturday, the small team was preparing a launch breakfast in the apartment for all the new volunteers. Rachel opened the door to let in Mrs. Jimenez from next door, carrying a tray of tamales. Mr. Patel followed, arms full of milk cartons. A teenager with purple hair who worked at the bookstore brought fresh bread. "Coffee's on the left," Daniel said, offering a warm handshake. "You folks are the heart of this thing." Rachel watched him with quiet admiration. This man, once cloaked in suits and silence, had become something new. Still sharp, still determined, but softer, grounded, present. As the room filled, Noah tugged Daniel's sleeve and whispered, "Do you think they'll come back every week?" Daniel knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Only if we keep giving them a reason to." He nodded to the center of the room, where a long table stood covered in mismatched tablecloths and plastic dishes. A paper sign taped above read, "Welcome to the family table." Later that evening, after the crowd had left, Daniel stood by the window watching the last van disappear down the block. Rachel joined him, sipping from a chipped mug. "You've changed," she said, almost absent-mindedly. "I had to," he answered, not turning. Noah didn't need a CEO, he needed a dad. She smiled. And this neighborhood didn't need another billionaire, it needed a neighbor. He finally looked at her. "Thank you. For everything. For believing in him. And for giving me the chance to become this." Rachel hesitated, then placed a folded note in his hand. "He wrote this while you were loading boxes." Daniel unfolded it. A drawing again, this time of a house. 3 windows, 1 door, a tree in front. Inside, the words, "This is home now." His throat tightened. Rachel reached for her coat. "I'm heading to bed. You coming?" He shook his head. "I want to sit a while." She paused at the door, then said softly, "You're a good father, Daniel." The door clicked shut behind her. Daniel sat alone, the drawing in his lap, the hum of the city far below. He thought of the boardroom he once ruled, the legacy he nearly lost, and the family he'd found not in wealth, but in an unspoken promise fulfilled. A boy with his eyes, a woman with his heart, and a neighborhood that for the first time called his name with love.